ships in the Red Sea by Iran-backed rebels.
These attacks have to stop. They need to stop. They're unacceptable. The United States, our allies and our partners, will do what we have to do to counter these threats and to protect these ships.
White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. Yesterday, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin announced the formation of a coalition of several countries to protect ships traveling in that area. Wall Street, the Dow gained 251, its ninth straight winning day. The Nasdaq plus 98, the S&P added 27, approaching a record high. America is listening to Fox News.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZzzQuil.
ZzzQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZzzQuil nights. Explore our products at ZzzQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
Punishment handed out for an Ohio teen accused of planning a mass shooting at a synagogue, part of which includes a history lesson.
The 13-year-old who's not named pled the equivalent of guilty in Stark County, Ohio, to misdemeanor inducing panic and disorderly conduct after prosecutors say he shared his plan on Discord to shoot up a Canton, Ohio synagogue back in September. A judge ordering the teen to read a book and then write a book report on Swiss diplomat and hero Karl Lutz, who's credited with saving more than 62,000 Hungarian Jews during World War II. The judge also ordering probation for the teen, no unsupervised internet access, and mandatory mental health treatment. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
South Carolina and Florida are two of the fastest growing states in the U.S. this year. That's according to new estimates from the U.S. Census Bureau, which shows the South dominated population gains. The U.S. added another 1.6 million people, with more than two-thirds coming from international migration. Over $4 million in lottery prize money in Illinois remains unclaimed.
Talk about a Christmas bonus. The agency reports there are 9 Illinois lottery prizes from the Lucky Day Lotto and Powerball that no one has claimed yet. So check your tickets. The largest prize overall is a Lucky Day Lotto ticket worth $1.2 million purchased in October at Jewel's Supermarket in Chicago. The second largest payday comes from a Powerball ticket worth $1 million, bought in August at a BP gas station in Chicago Heights. And a friendly reminder, winners have 1 year from the date of the drawing to claim their prizes.
Fox's CJ Papa. Water agencies in California have approved new rules for turning wastewater directly into drinking water, making it the second state besides Colorado to do so. I'm Lisa Lacera. This is Fox News.
Welcome to the Eight Oaks Recovery Hour. Eight Oaks is a men's recovery center. It's faith-based, Christian-based. We deal with alcohol and drug addiction. We sit on a 60-acre farm, and we have facilities in West Point, and our church here in Lawrenceburg and United. And we are excited to come today with Brandon and his parents. Last week we had a pretty exciting time. And we had a great response. Brandon called me, I think the next day or 2 days later, I can't remember exactly, and was just telling me that, he was getting all kinds of calls, and Steve, you were getting some calls. And so before we get into all of that, if you need help during this entire hour, please call us at 1-800-576-4396. If you need help, if you're a family member, if you're an addict yourself, just feel free to call that number, 1-800-576-4396. Okay, to get started, last week, I just pounded on the table. I got yelled at.
Hey, I kept my mouth shut, okay?
You give me the look, though.
You gave yourself the look.
Yes, I did. I caught what I did. So anyway, last week we dove into what it's like for families with addicts and parents, family members that struggle. How do you help a family member who is addicted to drugs or alcohol? And we kind of dove into that and shared the story, or I should say Brandon and Steve, you kind of shared your own experiences, and we talked last week about bringing Mom in. So here's Mom. And Brandon, to get us started, why don't you just introduce your parents one more time for those listeners out there that didn't hear us last week. Just kind of get us started by just introducing them.
My name is Brandon Keeton, and with me today I have my parents, Steve and Melody Keeton. Some of the greatest people you'll ever meet. Me and they've been my parents now for 34 years, and I think they get better as they go every single day. I joke with them all the time because, the first 27 years was 27? Yeah, was a piece of work. So I tell them, the rest of your life's a vacation. You ain't got nothing to worry about. You ain't got nothing, it's going to seem like
we do sure enjoy the grandkids, I'll say that.
I just help turn mountains into molehills, so nothing else would be a very big deal. But a little bit, so I get to tell my testimony all the time. I tell it quite regularly. On Monday nights, we have a Living Free program at United every Monday at 6 o'clock for men and women. Anybody in the community. It's not just for United. Anyone who wants to come and have a Bible study about stepping into freedom, finding freedom from life-controlling issues, being around like-minded men who truly want the best for you. Every Monday at 6 o'clock is when we do that. And where was I going with that?
Just shared a little bit about yourself a little bit, and then just introduce your parents.
Yeah, well, I was introducing my parents, but I went left field somewhere. So a little bit about my story. I started out as a really good kid, right? I thought I was one of a kind, I was very athletic. I was always into everything good and positive, and then sometime, sooner or later, things shifted in me, and I started to pursue the world more than I did God. And, spiraled out of control, one heartbreak, one lost job, one thing that didn't go my way after another. And eventually I was just lost to addiction, spinning out of control, and I couldn't help myself. I couldn't get back to where freedom was. And so I tried and everything I could do, but it was just a losing battle for 8 or 9 years. And my mom and dad was there with me through it all, and they suffered with me. They went through a lot of difficult and hard times, being right there beside me, but they never walked away from me. They never left me. They never quit praying for me. They never quit fighting for me, even when I couldn't fight for myself. I was 120 pounds, soaking wet. I was a needle junkie, methamphetamine, heroin. I was just at the end of my life, just a waste of a human, really. I couldn't form sentences. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't talk. Definitely couldn't make sound, logical decisions. I was just to the point where something had to happen. I had to have God miraculously heal me and set me free, or I was going to end my life, or I was just done. I was done living. And God stepped in and did what only God could do and set me free and healed me of Crohn's disease and anxiety and depression and anything and everything you can think of. And he's not just healed me. He's not just set me free, but He's blessed me beyond all measure. He's given me a beautiful wife that I definitely do not deserve. She is an angel sent straight from heaven that's given me 2 wonderful baby boys, Bricker and Arlo, that is just such a blessing. And I see God's love so much from being a father and having kids of my own, and it's such a different lens now. I was just thinking on the way up here how different life is, and thinking of the pain I was in 6 years ago is just beyond me now. Like, it makes no sense. Like, how was I in so much pain to where I literally didn't want to take the next breath, to today having so much joy and energy and purpose and drive about me? Like, it's just so foreign to me to think back and think that was the same person. But what happens whenever God and the Holy Spirit get involved in transforming of the mind daily and renewing of who I am and who He has called me to be, strengthen me, encourage me, building my faith daily. It's crazy what someone can do when they fully surrender their life to Christ. And so I get to tell my testimony. There it is. Boom. I get to tell my testimony all the time, on Monday nights, Living Free. Yep. I teach a young families class on Wednesday night at church at United. I lead a small group that's got 60 or 80 people in it. There's a whole bunch of us. So I get to share my testimony all the time, and it's quite easy for me. I get power from it. I've done it a lot, but Mom and Dad hadn't got to talk about their side of the story much because it's just one of those things that I don't know. There's just like this. You just don't talk about it. Like you just
There's a time where definitely we're not real proud of. So,
but
how to forget it.
It takes a lot of courage to be able just to open up and be transparent for something that is such a personal family issue that you really just want to keep it in-house. But the courage of you guys coming out and sharing that experience, that very painful experience, and I think you're doing that because you know that there's a lot of family members out there that can be touched and ministered to and blessed by your experience and your story. And so we wanted to kind of share that story that was the intentions of last week, of coming and just sharing that story, because there's so many family members nowadays, and we talked about a little bit last week about it's affecting not just every community, but every family now. I mean, I don't know of hardly any family that doesn't have an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, someone in their family that is not affected by addiction.
That's right.
And so for the moments that we have here this evening, I want us just to kind of open up. And first of all, thank you, folks, for all of you guys that are out there that responded on Facebook and listening on the radio. Steve and Brandon, I know that you guys were telling me, just tell us a little bit about some of the response that you get and some of the stories and phone calls and that you've been getting about your story last week.
Yeah, you want to go, Brandon?
I tend to have a few people reach out quite often, but I mean, anytime we push something or share testimonies or do videos like that on Facebook and talk on the radio, it just opens up. It just makes you vulnerable where people say like, oh, I'm not the only one who's going through this, or I've got this person, or just reaching out for help. People that need direction, people that's going through some of the toughest times they've ever went through, and there's no playbook, there's no book you can read. It's just, man, people just desperately needing help, and all I've got to do the past, when people call, is either pray for them or push them in another direction towards 8 Oaks or Living Free on Monday nights, but prayer. Now I'm thinking about those people. Now I'm praying for those people. Now I got to pray for some of them on the phone. It's just, it's awesome that, y'all think some of the hardest times that y'all ever had to go through was for nothing, but in fact, sharing our testimony and what we had to go through can significantly help other people, at least give them some hope, at least give them some motivation that this isn't all for nothing. It's what I am doing is helping. What I continue to do, even though it feels like it ain't doing nothing. Like, eventually, it could change everything. So that's what we're trying to do is be a little bit of hope when there seems to be absolutely none. If a man like me can make it back and our family can be reunited like we've been reunited, and not only just stay sober every day, but thrive and succeed in life, then surely you can too, That's been my experience. Which I'm used to that, like I said earlier, but Dad and Mom, they're not used to that. They're not.
Well, I think we've kind of taken a direction from you, because we didn't just go out and say, how are you today? My son's a drug addict, to people. But Brandon played basketball in the league 2 years ago and played a really good team. And when walking out, Steve said, hey, I enjoyed watching you play. And Brandon said, yeah, man, that was fun. And the guy said to Brandon, you did good. And Brandon said, oh, I've taken 10 years off. I've done meth. I've done, whatever. And the guy was just, well, I'll pray for you, man. And I told Brandon, I said, you can't do that to people. And he said, well, I said, they don't know what to do with that, son. And that's where he's at. And we're getting there, but it's just like, you're not ready for somebody just to drop that in your lap and know what to do with it. And so that's been helpful for us, because a lot of our friends they knew something was going on with Brandon, but had no idea to the extent that it affected our lives. Because we are busy people, and we just kept going and doing the things we do, and just dealt with everything as best we could, and didn't just go around saying, hey, this is what's going on with Brandon. Because you just didn't feel, comfortable enough to do that.
Sure.
But we do now. We talk to lots of people now and sharing about, well, you know, Brandon's a recovered drug addict, and they're like, oh, you know, and so then we talk about it. But
and some people don't know how to handle that. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, you know, because you know you don't know. But for Brandon, I mean, it was one of those things where he was so proud of where he is now, and knows where he is. He tells people, he said, you know, and you know, people will ask him questions about it, and it gives him a chance to open up, and I think that's great as well.
So pretty much, if you know Brandon now, you know Brandon.
You know everything about
Yeah.
So forever I was a closed book and had every secret you could ever. Now I don't know if I have any secrets.
No.
I'm an open book.
Well, you know, that's one of the things in at 8 Oaks that we talk to the guys about is that if you truly want recovery, you have to be open and honest, and everything that you don't want to be, you have to be, and that's open and truthful and honest and be vulnerable. And it's all those things that you don't want to be. Those are the key ingredients, some of the key ingredients to becoming sober and living that normal life and to have that freedom in your life. And if you're not open, if you're not willing to be vulnerable, then you're going to struggle in your sobriety and risk relapse. We talked about today about about believing. And it's more than just a casual belief. It's where you're willing to drop everything and follow Christ. Drop everything and change and allow God to change your nature. And we use the illustration of a guy back in 1859 that went across the Niagara Falls had a tight wire, and he has a wheelbarrow, and he goes across it on the tight rope, and he does it 2 or 3 times, and he has a huge audience there, a couple hundred people, 200, 300, 400 people. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but anyway, they're all there, and he says, "How many believe I can do this again?" And they go, "Yes," and they're clapping and they're hooraying, yeah, you could do it, and cheering him on. And he goes, "Well, who's going to be the first one in the wheelbarrow?" Now that's belief. Do you believe, or do you really believe enough to trust God to get you to that next level, that next step? And that's what you were willing to do, Brandon. You were willing to. And I hear it in your testimony. I hear it in not even in your testimony, but just talking to the guys about God and everything. It's just an openness and a vulnerability that you have that you don't really hold anything back now. And if we can get the guys just to open up and just believe, and it's okay, and it's just go for it, man, there's so much freedom in that. Yeah, and that you I believe have led the example, and the guys see that, and you guys don't see it on Monday nights. But every time I bring new guys in and they hear Brandon's testimony, and Brandon probably gets tired of telling that testimony after a while, he's like, "Do you guys want the long version or the short version tonight?" And so but when he gets done, there is so much encouragement you can see in their face. And the next day when we come back and we talk about it, they are so excited because they see that hope that, they're seeing themselves as at the bottom. But when they see Brandon and they hear his testimony, they think, maybe I can be the same way. Mm-hmm. He was able to do all that he did in that short a period of time. Maybe there is hope. Maybe there is something to this thing called God. And so that journey was painful, though. Yeah. That journey to get there where you can have that impact, it was painful for you, and it was painful for you, and it was painful for you, all three of you guys. But here's the exciting thing. You can look back on it now, and you can say, though it was painful, look how many lives can be changed and transformed through your pain. Mm-hmm. And so
that's our prayer and hope.
Yes,
sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to read something.
You asked me. Let me.
Yeah, go ahead.
You asked Brandon and I
yes.
about that, but for me, I did have a couple people that reach out to me, and one, I asked Brandon to call them and talk to them as well. But so people heard the program and they talked, and they're curious about it and just wondering how they could get help. I mean, and so. We talked to them, but I think it's important that, like the one Brandon called, I mean, it's important that they've got to be ready to get help. Right. Sometimes people just aren't at that stage yet to where, I've had a person I've talked to, and I've actually said something about, hey, we need to do this, and it's just like, but I enjoy they're just not at a point where they're ready for help.
Right.
It'll come, but right now they're just not ready for help. So I think that's the first step. They've got to know that they need help. So I guess that's where.
Well, it took Brandon a while.
Yeah, it did. It did.
And he would try, but until he really got to the very bottom and God answered, right?
Mm-hmm. And we talked about that.
Last week
there
you
was
did, yeah.
several times where he decided that he was going to do it himself, and he tried hard. I mean, one time maybe 10, 14 days, and then, just he couldn't. And I think I mentioned that last week. He couldn't. He was taking it to get high, but he had to take it to survive. He couldn't even function or get out of bed without taking something. So that's just a hard point to be in. And, I encourage people, for me, I think seeing what I saw from my dad being an alcoholic and seeing things he did and just violent when he was drinking, I think young people, if they could just set their mind on what they will and won't do. They got to just say, okay, I'll never do this because. And Brandon mentioned that because I had seen this firsthand, and he hadn't really, because it was his grandfather, my dad, and he didn't get to see that part of it. But I knew it was something I didn't want to be a part of, and we also knew we had kind of addictive personalities. So I knew that if I was ever faced with drugs or whatever, I already had my mind set that the answer was going to be no. I could walk away. And so I think that's important for younger people or people that are out there that maybe are followers instead of leaders. I think that's important to know.
Yeah. Well, let me read this. And when I read this, I want to get your response.
Okay.
Mel, you first.
Okay.
And so let me read it. We found him curled up. Now, this is a book, by the way, that I was just had laying around the house, and I was going to bring it out to 8 Oaks. And we try to build a library out there for the guys to read and stuff. And I happened to see this, and knowing that we had this interview coming up, and we just did the other one, I started reading through it, and I found this one section here in the introduction that it just kind of jumped out at me, and I just wanted to get your response. So here it goes. We found him curled up in a fetal position on the concrete floor of an abandoned multi-story military barracks, alone except for the broken glass, empty medicine bottles, and lurid graffiti covering the walls. A disillusioned, broken teenager, he was barely breathing, the hood of his black sweatshirt hiding the pain and confusion lying deep behind inflated black pupils that nearly blotted out his hazel eyes. Through the drug-induced haze of his fourth escape from reality in as many days, he lay motionless, staring straight ahead, not even recognizing the sound of his older brother's voice. How could this possibly have happened? I wondered in relief, sadness, and terror. How had the most gentle and caring of our 3 sons, the laid-back boy with the easy smile and open heart, been reduced to an emotionless runaway, the self-inflicted lighter burns on his body, a testament to an indifference to pain, living or dying? How could this 16-year-old, who less than a week earlier had left home on a typical Friday morning from school, now be flirting with death by overdose? Can you relate to that?
I can, and there was many times that if we were at home not knowing where he was, and if we would have gotten a phone call that he was found like that, it wouldn't have surprised us at all. Now, I never saw him to that extent of any of that, but, I got up one morning and there he laid, and beside him was a needle. I had no idea he was doing drugs by needle. It's like you live in a dreamlike state at times where you think, oh, this was a good day, and tomorrow maybe we're going to do better tomorrow, and you build on any kind of positiveness that you can find. And he could play us. He knew who to call me for certain things, and he would call Steve for certain things. And, you know, together, we thought he would be doing good. And then we would kind of realize, no, he wasn't doing good. And then there's not a playbook for this. You don't know how you're supposed to help your child. And my worst fear was to kick him out and find him like that.
Yeah.
So we never did kick him out, but we were going to.
Pretty much the day he was arrested was the day that Mel had said, okay, he's got to go. We've got to do something different. He can't, because he was starting to, he actually scared her that day before. And
But he wasn't changing. It was just getting worse and worse and worse. At that point, we
was.
realized he wasn't getting, the positive was gone. It was all, more negative. And we had told him he had to go to rehab or he had to do something, and then he would go for days, and we didn't know where he was and not come back, and we couldn't live like that anymore. It had gotten to that point where something had to change. So I always made him do those kind of conversations. I couldn't kick my baby boy out to the curb.
Yeah.
Well, and we sure didn't want to. I mean, we just knew our life and his life, and I just thank God that he was at the point where he knew he had to change also, because we were all at kind of the end of the rope.
Yeah.
And so just kind of hanging on by by a knot at the end, but we just knew something had to change. He had to get help, and he had said, I think he had already said that he knew he was at a point where he either had to get help or he wasn't going to be around any longer. I mean,
I tend to think he did. He left things out on purpose. Like, he knows the police are there and he was messed up or whatever, but to get out from underneath a vehicle and let a needle roll around, I mean...
That's just God. I didn't do none of that.
Yeah. I kind of think, and to leave a needle out for me to see. And then, he had taken stuff of ours and pawned it. We didn't know. And one day he left his wallet. So we looked in his wallet and found all the pawn slips. It's kind of like he would leave us clues, or God did, for certain things that we would find along the way. And we still, as we talk, we still learn stuff new every day, every time we talk about different things that he did or whatever.
So it cost me a lot to go buy my stuff back from the pawn shops.
Yeah.
We bought
that
the
was
same,
expensive.
I guess we shouldn't say we, but my dad bought that same Fender's guitar about 4 times.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
keep taking it to the pawn shop.
And then the guy at the pawn shop was one of Steve's friends, and he got to where he would call Steve and say, I don't know, do you know Brandon's bringing this stuff? And so then he would quit taking stuff, didn't he?
I mean,
I think at some point, yeah.
I was like, it's just the last.
I mean, you just, an addiction is expensive.
Trying everything you can do. You're ashamed to ask for your parents for money, because, I mean, I was making, those days, I was making good money. In the meth days, I don't think I was pawning anything
No, you
and stuff
weren't.
like that. It was just, my whole brain was gone. So, like, even, like they're saying, the times whenever I was acting different, it wasn't like it was just getting constantly worse. It was just, it was it. Like, you couldn't get no worse than that. It was just, Brandon wasn't here no more. My brain was completely, I mean, just,
Yeah.
I made no sense whatsoever, jibber-jabbering. We'd be getting mad at Dad. We'd be, what were we even talking about? Like, he has no clue what, Brandon, I don't understand a word you're saying, And to me, it was the most serious thing in the world. And I still, like, there's things that come up, and I have this thing with my memory. I don't know if it's inherited or what, or if it was the drugs, but I don't remember tons. And I think over the years, I just say God allows me to remember as he sees fit, because there's a lot of pain packed in those memories. And so a lot of times, like, he lets me deal with things as they come up, and I remember someone that I wronged or someone that I hurt or this incident, and I get to heal from it. I get to deal with it. Which I think 6 years in now, those have pretty much all happened. But, like, just for the longest time, I feel like he would just give me memories as I could deal with them. And then I would have to deal with this situation and things that I did in the past, and I'd have to find forgiveness within myself or my parents, And Jesus is the author of reconciliation. So a lot of times, which is so cool, like, so many people that I've wronged or so many people that I broke their heart or did this or did that, or I wasn't in the right mind and I should have handled this situation completely different. When you get saved, it's like it just disappears. Yeah. And it's the same thing with my friends. Like, you turn your life over to God. What you did to me, like, it's just gone. I don't care. You've given your life to Christ. It's the coolest thing in the world. Like, we don't have to talk about it. It's Jesus is the author of reconciliation. You don't do anything to earn it. Like, you get saved, it fixed a lot of me and my parents' issues. It's saying sorry without saying I'm sorry. Like, I could go through a laundry list of things that I need to tell my parents I'm sorry for, where they know it, you know, and a lot of those things I've had to reach out and say I'm sorry for this or I'm sorry for that, but I've shown them through action that I'm definitely sorry, and I've grieved those processes and went through it, because especially, you know, just some of the stuff you do as an addict, you hurt the people you love the most. Like, I wasn't stealing from anyone but my parents, the people who were doing everything to help me. I wasn't mean to anybody but my parents, my mama, you know, the sweetest person in the world who would never do anything. It's just crazy how...
Well, last week you shared that story. Now share that story while your mom's here.
She's the one that told me about me coming in your bedroom and just demanding for money. And
we had just refereed volleyball, and we had all this. They pay us $2 a piece, and I had all this money, and it was $80 total, probably. And I was just sitting there counting it, and he came in and he said, I need money, and so I handed him a 20. Well, that wasn't good enough. And he just wanted all of it. He wanted me to give it all to him, and I finally just threw it at him, thinking he'd say, okay, never mind. But no, he gathered every bit of that up and went out the door with it. But when he scared me is when I had gotten a new phone, and he demanded that I give him that phone. And addicts will do that. Addicts think they deserve the best and all. And I had locked the door, and he beat on the door, and he said, I want the new phone. He was just hollering at me and screaming, and, you know, and so that's when he scared me, is because he had never knocked on the door and hollered at me before. But I was like, I'm not giving you this new phone. You can your phone's fine. But he was determined to get the phone.
It had gotten, his demeanor had changed there, right, and this was right before.
You don't remember that story, do you?
He had got arrested.
And I'm a 27-year-old dude acting like a 13-year-old, you know?
But it got to where when I went out of town, I would take all my jewelry with me. You know, I'd pack everything up, because I didn't know if he was going to steal stuff or do, or what. And he that was the only time he was ugly to me. Otherwise, he would just come in and say, but you know, kids don't understand sarcasm much anymore. And I found that out with Brandon, because I was like, just take it all. And I didn't think he would, but he sure gathered it all up, and out the door he went, you know, so... but even in just being a kid and sarcasm, it was just the state he was in. You know, every night he would come in, and for a long time he would wake us up, tell us he was home, and talk to us about his night, and then we would rest because he was there. And now I don't know how much of what he told us was true or not true, but he was fine when he would talk to us, but that made us feel okay. But I think Steve mentioned last week, the best time that we slept was when he was in jail. And I know a lot of people are afraid of him being in jail, but, you know, there's a whole system, and we had to learn all that, because at first we would go to the jail and sit in the lobby and video and talk to him. And that was awful, because there was all kinds of stuff going on around in the lobby and all, and so then we found out we could do it at home on our computer, and I had to buy stuff so we could do all that and get the video feed. And so we videoed him every day, wasn't it every day?
Yeah.
At a certain time, and all the guys, the inmates, would run by and sit down and talk and wave at us, and I knew he was safe. I saw where he was. He was sleeping under the stairwell. He had moved his mattress under there so where he could rest, but he wasn't like people in a jail cell and being tormented or whatever. Mm-hmm. So we knew he was okay, and I think he said he would call us one day and he'd be fine. I deserve to be here. I need to be here. Then the next day, y'all got to get me out of here. And then the next day, he'd be even madder. Then the next day, well, I know I need to be here. It was just a constant roller coaster ride. But that's where he needed to be, and that's where he himself will tell you he gave his life to God and was saved there. And had we gotten him out and brought him home, we would still be on the same road we were.
I truly believe that. And Brandon's always had such a giving heart, and I think the reason he had his mattress under the stairway is because somebody needed a bed, and didn't you offer them that? And you said, well, I'll just sleep under the stairs or something, I think.
I can't remember. I don't
he was still in state, he didn't remember anything. Yeah. Because I remember thinking, well, that was nice of you, Brandon, to do that.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to talk on, and I've never asked y'all this question, but I feel like a lot of parents that are going through what y'all have been through definitely not only struggle with what you should do with me, but like as a couple. And can you touch on like how it put strain on y'all's relationship and things that helped y'all to keep on pushing through? And
I think for us, maybe because we're both grounded in Christ,
right.
But I see how, I think for us, we kind of knew we had to work together because it wasn't something she could do or I could do. Now there was often times where I'd look back and think I should have been a lot tougher on Brandon, because we talked about last week that we raised Mallory and Brandon the same, and even you didn't. I mean, you'd tell me that we should have been tougher on him or something should have changed. I don't know that it would have helped, but you're always looking back, kind of reaching for, okay, what could we have done different that might have changed or made a difference? Maybe not let him run around with people that we thought were good that weren't. I mean, I just, I don't know.
Well, back then there was no Life 360, or he had a cell phone, but there just wasn't a way, and so we just trusted that he was doing things, and we probably shouldn't have. Steve was more naive than I was, but I didn't want to rock the boat, so to speak, as much, and I would want him to say things and do. But as far as us together, I don't remember us. We were stressed, but I don't ever remember us arguing or getting in fights or whatever. We talked about everything the whole time, and we pretty much agreed on most stuff with Brandon. But again, Steve always wanted to see the brighter, the silver lining or whatever.
I'm extremely a positive person.
And I would have to say, but I don't think he's doing this, Steve. And he'd say, well, Mel, he told us, it was just kind of that kind of thing. And but like I said, we were busy and we kept going with our lives, because he was coaching volleyball and he's deacon at church and I was at the Sunday school, and that was hard. And I was telling him today that I thought at times, should we be in these roles? Should we be doing these things? Because our household's not where it needs to be, as with our son and all. And I think that's the hardest thing with us, is that we didn't just go out there and share with all the people or our friends or whatever, because not that we were afraid we'd be judged. It's just maybe that's not who we thought everybody thought we were. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We were supposed to be this family.
The perfect family.
Yes, and we weren't, so to speak. And that was tough, because I felt like we were living so much kind of a lie ourselves, and not telling everybody. And of course, everybody tells us now, we knew something was going on with Brandon, but when they tell them really stories, they have no idea to the extent of what was going on with Brandon or what we were doing. Or, Steve told you that we couldn't find him that one night, and we rode around and he's on the phone, and then we can't get him on the phone. And, he calls me because our daughter, I'd gone to Memphis with her, and he calls me, the first DUI you got, and it's like your world just shatters. And people may not think DUI is a big thing, but it changes your life. You have to carry different insurance, your, what all else is
your
it?
Vehicle.
Your
SR22, you got to have interlock devices, smart starts, you got to have breathalyzers,
and it's even if they just pull you over because your blinker's out and you drank at the country club, if you're whatever, you're going to get a DUI. And there were so many times I'd be at the Mexican restaurant and all these people are drinking. I wanted to walk up and say, who's driving y'all home? Because if you get pulled over, y'all have got a DUI, and you know what that means for your life? It's a lot of stuff.
She did tell me that a lot. She'd say, I wonder who's driving them home.
But if it doesn't touch your life, you don't understand that.
That's true.
And it's not like I'm sitting there judging them for drinking, but it's like somebody's got to drive y'all home. And odds are, if you get pulled over for whatever, y'all's problems are going to just start, because...
and we were trying to talk today, and you can't imagine what goes through if you get a DUI and you get in the court system and what all's involved. Just all that they're talking about and going back before the judge. But, to think we went through that 5 times. Brandon had 5 DUIs, I think is what he had, in 3 different states. He got one in North Dakota and Alabama and Tennessee, and so...
North Dakota's the only one that we didn't help you do anything about, but...
Well, the last one I put on my big boy britches, thank you, and I handled all my football.
But you're talking about just a scary, when you get that call, and I remember the one he got, North Dakota, that wasn't the last one. The last one was I guess was in
Alabama.
2 or 3 more after
But
that.
the one
That
that
was
you
the
got
second
there, and man, your heart just drops, and you just kind of have a sense of, like, I guess what you said about, man, not only him, but I feel like I'm at the bottom.
Well, and we
Feel
could
like
have
we're at
just
the
not
bottom.
done anything, but Brandon calls us and tells us about North Dakota, and it was always not his fault. He was just driving around playing in his vehicle in the snow.
I wasn't even, just to be fair, I wasn't even driving the vehicle. I was stuck, caught a tow truck, and got a DUI, and I could see the front door of my house. But it was God the whole time shaking me, trying to wake me up, like, hey, bud, listen, this ain't what you need to be doing.
See,
that wasn't an excuse, that was the truth.
In Alabama, when he got pulled over, supposedly he had just fallen asleep at the wheel, and so he was working seconds, and he told us, I got to be at work and I won't be able to get there in time. So we go, and Steve answers the roll call for Brandon.
So that's when I was extremely bad alcoholic and opiate addict.
Yeah,
And
and we thought he was doing good, and he comes in and he sits down beside me, and I thought, uh-oh. Something's going on with him. And he goes up to talk to the district attorney, assistant district attorney there, drunk and high.
And she could smell alcohol in my breath 10 foot away.
So when he sat down beside us, and I told Mel, I said, I smell. And so when he gets up there, they handcuff him and take him out. I mean, he came to court.
And you see this type of stuff in movies and stuff. So, like, I knew I was going to court. They told me I'd probably be drug tested, all this other stuff. And so I'm trying my very best not to be high. But I've been taking 3 Roxys a day just to get up out of bed, 2 throughout the day, pain at night, blah, blah, blah. Drinking myself to sleep, basically. Like, I'm so dependent on opiates. And it's just as much as I can possibly get to get through. And if the opiates didn't do it, maybe the liquor would. Well, at the end, I'm trying to get 3 to 4 days sober, not have opiates in my system, and go to this court. And I was in devastated pain. And I tried to go as long as I could to where I couldn't. And then whenever I drank, I couldn't quit drinking. And then I just... So, I mean, I tried my very best
Going
to
back
be
to what
sober
you
to get to
said
court.
earlier, that he wasn't using to get high, he was using to survive at that point.
Dude, I was in a camper, and I'm talking about just hell on earth, literally puking my brains out, trying anything and everything I can do to be sober for 4 days to go to court. I took off 2 days of work. I don't even think y'all knew that.
No, we didn't. See, that's why we went, is because he was supposed to be working, and I mean, we would have gone anyway, but we got there early so he could answer that here for Brandon, so that he wouldn't get contempt of court or whatever. And then he sidles in all just, and I was like, oh my gosh.
And we're like,
So
he gets
they
up there.
impound his truck and take him to jail. But that's when he got sent to rehab, court order rehab the first time,
Which was a cry for help. If y'all don't remember, I was a lead automation specialist for a plant down on the river. Over like 26 guys, 2 different factories. Like, I was the dude. And it makes no sense. Had a $1,000 a week opiate addiction, drugs or alcohol on top of that. It's just like, makes no sense whatsoever how I was even in a position in that and doing it kind of good. Like, man, what I can do sober, you know? It's just blows your mind. I remember sitting on top of the tramway. I mean, we're 120 foot away. I'm just overlooking everything. You remember me calling you at 2 o'clock in the morning or something? And I'm just, Dad, I can't do this. Man, I can't live like this. And this whole entire time, this is how it always hits too, is they thought I was doing good again.
We did.
You got this great job I was making way too much money back then, and and then here it is. They have no clue that, like, I'm thinking about jumping off this tramway. Like, what can you? And I'm like, Dad, come get me now. Like, I don't know what to do. I'm just bawling, sobbing. I need someone to help me. I don't know how I've gotten to this point. I'm at again.
I think maybe the reason that because then we just jumped in to save, and instead of being like, why is he like this? You shouldn't let him, or accusing each other or blaming each other. It was more about saving Brandon, and that was pretty much our focus all the time.
Well, folks, I hope that you are enjoying this time if you are listening to this and you're hearing this and it's really touching your heart and it's moving you, and you know somebody that is maybe in the same position that Brandon is in, or maybe that your family is going through this yourself, please pick up the phone at 1-800-576-4396, 1-800-576-4396. Now, I want to quote a scripture, and this scripture I came across, I was just reading and I came across it this week, and it's a difficult scripture. And it's got to be difficult for parents and family members with addicts. But I want to read the scripture, and then I want to get your response, okay?
Sure.
It's Proverbs 19:18. It says, "Discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives." And I think that speaks to all parents out there. And I know from my experience in the pastoral role I'd have it at Eight Oaks, as I talk with these guys every day, and they talk with about their parents and their moms. Moms are some of the worst when it comes to enabling, and they enable their children, or they enable their husband or wife or spouse. So enabling is one of the big reasons why addicts remain addicts. But that being said, it's easier to say that. It's a lot harder to live that out. And that scripture right there, that's principles. God has principles for every single thing in life, I believe. And there's a principle for us as humans, as parents. What do you think about that? How hard is that?
Read that one more time.
It says, discipline your children while there is hope. Otherwise, you will ruin their lives.
I agree. Yeah. We were talking, and we led very, very busy lives. And I kind of think that played a part in a lot that went on with Brandon, because Steve coached 3 sports. I helped him. We just, he got forgotten at school one time. Somebody was supposed to take him home, and they didn't, But when he came home from rehab this last time, we were retired. And we agreed to bring him home, and I was going to drug test him every day, but he couldn't leave Steve's side. And he didn't. He went everywhere Steve did, and I think that played a part. You were ready. You had, gave your life to Christ, and you were more ready than you ever had been. But I do think that being able to have more of a focus on Brandon than we had focus on him, but it was to save him, not to nurture him, so to speak.
Right, at that point.
At that point. Mm-hmm. And so he did. He stayed right, and I never drug tested him one time because I didn't have to.
But just to touch base, y'all were amazing parents.
I know.
And not 2% of the population has parents or a childhood that I got to live. I chose to walk out on my own and do what I did, apart from your discipline. And could you have been more hard? Yeah. Am I going to be more hard on my kid? Bless their hearts, probably so. But it's not that you did something wrong. You did. And as parents, you do exactly what you feel like you need to do in the situation. And I was an amazing athlete. We pushed that. I turned down tons of full ride scholarships to play tennis or to play this, but you did what you were supposed to do. It was up to me, and I lied about the people I was hanging out with and what we were doing here, and what they didn't know that all me and my buddies did was drink. They had no clue, and they loved my friends because we could put on a good front in front of people.
Yeah.
So trying to say that you should have been more hard on me, I think isn't fair, because you had no clue until it was.
We didn't, but I do think that we could have recognize the difference in y'all's personalities. Now, Brandon he did not like to be alone. He wanted buddies around him at all times. And we had a foreign exchange student one time, and that was perfect. He had a perfect buddy to go everywhere with him and do everything. And that was Brandon. And so the fact that Brandon needed somebody or wanted somebody all the time, I think led him to maybe be with the wrong crowd at times. Because
codependency is a part of addiction as well.
Yeah. He was... When he was like 12 or 10, our neighbor was there, and Brandon sat down on the couch beside him. I mean, as close to him as he possibly could get. And I'll never forget that guy looked and said, "Man, what are you doing?" There was a whole couch over there, And Brandon was like, "Oh," and he scooted over. He just was that kind of a kid. He wanted somebody all the time with him, always wanted friends. And, and it ended up to where the friend group got to be the wrong group, or...
And he was a great kid, but he just, things happened, and he just kind of went the wrong direction. And, sometimes you blink your eye, and all of a sudden you're like, what happened? Right. Look where I'm at, and how did I get here? So I think that was Brandon and maybe us. Just, we blink our eyes, and all of a sudden we're like, how do we get to this point? I mean, and how do we help him now? And that was a long process to...
I think my biggest thing, just to be honest, looking back, was heartbreaks.
Yeah.
And if And I'm going to be a whole lot more strict on my kids on dating and stuff like that than y'all were. But how would you supposed to know that? But I feel like I lost my innocence whenever doing stuff with girls that I shouldn't be doing, or going places I shouldn't be going like that. And then once you do something that steals your innocence, it's not so difficult to do something else. Well, I'm not this pure innocent. Oh, I can do this now. I can do
Right.
drinking's not so much now, or smoking weed's not that big a deal now. You know, it's just it robs that innocence little by little by little. You know, and getting your heart broke. It just I don't know.
Crushed him.
To me, girlfriends. I felt like if you had one
crushed.
girlfriend, that was supposed to be girlfriend for life. I guess. And so it would break my heart, and that was my biggest thing was heartbreak. But like you said, me always having to have somebody, being dependent on somebody, I felt like I found my worth in my relationships, and it wasn't until I found my relationship or my worth in God. And I delighted myself in Him, and then He gave me the desires of my heart. I was always so tore up that all my friends were married, they had babies, they had all this stuff, but I wasn't delighting myself in God, so He could give me the desires of my heart. Because I had this Lydia Beatrice in my head, in my mind, you know, this girl that I desperately wanted, but I sure didn't deserve her. And until I got into the place to where I deserved something, such a gift as my wife, until I prepared my heart for that, until I was truly happy being a child of God, and that's it. Then He gave me that. But I think over the years, it was one failed relationship after another. And when I did good was whenever I had a girlfriend. And that's a temporary fix to whatever. A girl's not going to keep you sober. I'm sorry. No, a guy's not going to keep you sober. It don't work. It just doesn't work. It's not for yourself, and with God, it just doesn't stick. It's just a temporary, I made it through that day. I made it through this day. I didn't do this. But it never helps.
I have to say that we are so blessed with Lydia, because I used to pray, God, who's going to love my child?
Yeah. And now I hit the daggum jackpot.
It's like, you know, you have all this history and all this stuff and all, and you just think, who's going to love him? Who's going to look past all that?
It was a great fear of mine. And then God giving you your she never talks. She loves my past. She don't bring stuff. It's just, she knows it made the man that she loves today, and she loves the story and God's redemption, and she loves all that, but she don't care about that. Like, she don't, and that's not typically how relationships go. They're always worried about this or that or this. No, she's my biggest fan. She's my biggest supporter. She loves me and pushes me, and it's awesome. On the flip side of things, you never think anyone will ever love your son with all his problems and all his messes, and then you get gifted with this woman that, like, where did she come from? This ain't even a real person, you know? Like, it's just so different than anything.
She's who God had waiting for you.
Yeah, she's my girl, you know?
Yeah. So, but relationships was his spiral.
And so me, I think I'll be more strict in that area. You know, and Lydia, the background she had, she didn't get to date much, you know, and me and her's the only thing she's like. She doesn't even know how good I am to her because she's never had nothing else, you know. So.
Back to your question about how it handles with parents, I think maybe that is part of the reason that you've gotten to where you are, because we did work together and we never accused or blamed or fussed and not to say that we're perfect by any means, but we just kind of internalized and tried to do it. But we talked about everything. And, you know, like the jail system, you have to figure that out, and we had to figure that out together. And because they ought to hand you a pamphlet when your child goes to jail and says, this is what they can have, this is how you feed them, this is where you get money, you know, and that kind of stuff, because you got to figure all that out. And it's just something, if I didn't have Steve or Steve didn't have me, it would have been a whole different story.
Yeah. And having y'all's foundation in Christ and going through that means all the difference, because I can't tell you how many relationships don't make it through that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's some of the, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault.
I can see how it can be tough. I mean, you know, it's just like if you don't get sleep or something's happened in your life that just, you know, you're. I mean, it's easy to blame, and it's easy to just, you know, go off on your wife or go off, you know. And so, I'm thankful that we were able to kind of just work together and knew that we had to, because, you know, he needed more help than even both of us could probably give him, you know. And so,
how do you think that you would have handled this and how this would have turned out if it wasn't God-centered? If you guys didn't have that relationship with God, what would have that have done to your guys' relationship, not just your relationship with your son, but
I think we
relationship
would have
with each
been
other.
more angry and accusing.
No
and,
doubt. Yeah, we would have been at each other's throat all the time because I just.
You know, I could see me saying, I don't have an addictive personality in my family.
You do.
It's your fault.
Yeah. So this is all your fault. But you know, we just had to work together, and that was only by God's grace. But if we hadn't have had that, it would have been completely different. I feel certain.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
We're getting close to our time here, but I wanted to ask, not ask a question, but ask you. I don't know how many are out there listening or is going to be listening on Facebook.
Right.
But those who do listen, those parents out there, those spouses, those family members, that this Christmas is going to be painful for a lot of folks out there.
It is.
I know we've got some that are in our program, and there's a lot of pain right now with some of our guys because it's Christmas time. They can't be home with their family members, and their family members have got to be hurting. And then we've got some that are in jail. Maybe you're listening right now, and you're sitting in one of those pods, and your parents are at home, just maybe going to have the only child they have maybe is in jail, and maybe mom and dad's going to be eating Christmas dinner all by themselves. I don't know. There's so many different scenarios that we can come up with, but whatever it is, there's a lot of pain right now for a lot of people. What kind of advice can you give to those folks right now that are they're not where you got folks are at years later with Brandon being successful and made it through it? They can't see the light at the end of the tunnel yet.
Yeah.
What kind of advice do you have for
Brandon was in jail
them?
during Christmas. And we videoed him, and you remember Mallory and Stephen, we all were going around, and I think that was a humbling experience for him, that his whole family was videoing him while he was in jail for Christmas. And it was hard, you know, and that was one of the things he kept fussing at us, and, you know, it's Christmas, you got to get me out. But our pastor and other people said, you got to leave him, and that's the best that we could do, and it is really hard, and you know,
It's really hard like that when you think, I've got to help my son, I've got to help them get out of jail. But that is not helping them. I mean, so you got to make a stand and just know that they're in a good place. And like I said, we slept well when he was in jail.
I think the guys that are in jail or at 8 Oaks or whatever, they just have to know that they've got to get through this Christmas and get better for other Christmases, you know. And for parents, they've just got to pray for their kids and try to help them the best they can. But that's all you can do. You got, like, if they're in jail, you got to leave them. For us, and I think you would agree, that's what saved you.
Yeah, and don't help them in a way that you're enabling them, but get them help or that, and don't give up on them. I mean, we didn't give up on Brandon. We were.
Well, Steve, Mel, I really appreciate you folks coming in and Brandon sharing your story. I'm sure that there are many, many, many people out there that are going to be blessed and encouraged, and maybe you said something that could give them strength through all this. So I just want you to know that what you are doing, it's worth it. It's worth exposing and the transparency, and we thank you for that. Folks, again, that number, if you need help, is... if I can find it, I lost it. It's 800-576-4396. Thank you very much. God bless you, and have a good evening.
Albert Breer, and now it's Rich Eisen.
That's right. Welcome to this edition of the Rich Eisen Show. We are live here on the Roku channel.